Welcome Moody Coda. This is Mike Moody. Hey, it's been a long time since I've done a video. Just in case you don't know, I am a professional ServiceNow developer with about 10 years worth of experience in the platform. Currently work as a lead developer and architect at eBay. And today I don't have anything like groundbreaking to share, but there is something recently that I had to do, which I felt would be useful to share with you folks in case you ever run into this challenge. Now, for those of you who have been working with ServiceNow for some time, you may or may not be familiar with the good old standard old workflow version mechanism uh, engine that used to be in play before the new flow and flow designer that is prevalent today. So this bit of advice or tip is for those of us who are still using the old workflow engine. And I don't know if you've ever encountered this, but this has hit us more than once to where, I don't know, we discover some feature modification or some bug that needs to be fixed within an existing workflow within the environment, and that particular issue may have been implemented by virtue of a workflow script activity or WF activity that you can add to the workflow engine. Here I have an example, a context up on screen of a change request flow, and you can see within the out-of-box change request flow there is one run script activity block that is available there. So let's say, for example, that you had customized this run script activity block and added some additional code to it, and something went wrong with that code, or you realized, oh, you need to make some kind of change to it, right? Well, as you know, the workflow engine requires you to basically go in your dev environment, check out the workflow, make your modifications, check it back in, and the process of checking it out and checking it back in generates actually a new version of the workflow, which then you have to capture an update set, pushed into production to make to get that version to go live, and that new version is only leveraged by new workflow contexts that are generated from that point forward for new requests that come in or new records that get generated. So often run into an issue where we may have like literally hundreds of active contexts out there, and this change is a fix because there's a bug that's prevalent, and you don't want to have to wait for those hundreds of contexts to run their course to completion without being able to take advantage of the fix. So how do you do that? How do you get around the limitations of that? So what I'm going to show you is just a little bit of a hack that you can do to enable you to basically update the script body of for your active context in production, so you don't actually have to wait for all those to complete out and and uh, and for the new records basically be generated to leverage your fix or your new version of your workflow. So let's take this, for example, this out of box flow. And let's assume that you did some customizations to this run script. So let's just take a quick look at this and actually, yeah, so let me just click on this guy real quick here and take a look at the script. So there's not much going on there. It's just like a single script include call. And by the way, this is for these type of workflows. This is basically best practice where you'd want to do all your heavy lifting for whatever script logic you want to employ uh, external to the workflow itself. So like they're doing here, then just call out to a script include to new up an instance of that object and execute the function on the script include. Then if something goes wrong with the code or you need to change it, you can do so outside of the workflow itself, and it'll be applicable for any live context that's running that hasn't hit this activity yet. It'll respect those changes if you've made them in the script include outside. But let's say, I don't know, maybe you had a green developer or somebody that come in and hard coded the code that's problematic directly into the script block, and you need to make a change to it or something. So that's what I'm talking about here, is being able to solve around that particular challenge. So let me show you what I did to sort of be able to do this in our production situation. So I'm actually kind of just getting used to the new San Diego UI interface. So forgive me if I stumble a little bit over things here, but basically what you'd want to do is open up the workflow editor window directly. That was a context that I had open for that one change record, but we'll go ahead and open up the workflow editor, and we're going to open up this workflow specifically, change request normal within the editor itself directly. So change request normal. All right, so that's that guy right there. And then this is a little bit of reverse engineering, but and I wanted to kind of show you the steps that I followed to figure out how to do this little hack. But basically, what I want to do is just double click on this run script block activity, and I want to figure out like, well, okay, so this is what I need to change or make some modifications. So where is this record? Where does it exist, and how can I modify it? Well, so this is how you can sort of figure all that out. So just right click here. Actually, the first thing I'll do is right click on the script block, say show script, and then here it's going to give us a clue. It's going to tell us, oh, look, this is the WF underscore activity table that this record resides in. So just grab that in the clipboard, pop over here, search that up and do a dot list to open up those list of records in that WF activity table, right? And then I want to get specifically this particular run block record, right? So then I could just right click the header and copy sysid. So then I go back to this list that I opened up for these workflow activities. And let me expand this down here. Just going to do a search for that sysid. There it is. So disassociate approval records to run script activity. I'm going to go ahead and open up that record. So open record. So this is just basically open up that exact same record inside the platform view instead of inside of the workflow editor view, right? Then from in here you can see, well, okay, hey, well, where the heck is this script field? Where's that script body? I don't see it here. I can't modify it. All I got is like this notes field and some reference here. What's going on? So actually, these fields here that you see rendered within the workflow editor here on these pop-ups are actually are not fields that directly exist or reside on this WF activity target record. They're actually variables that live in a completely separate table. That particular table is called the table name specifically is WF underscore variable underscore value. So, or I'm sorry, sys underscore variable underscore value. So if we do a list on that, you see there's a bunch of records in here, and these guys here have a ID field, right, which is actually a reference to the WFX, the WF activity. What is this called again? This is the workflow activity, WF activity record that we're looking at. So if I grab the sysid of this WF activity record, which I had from the other view as well, and I search this up in via the ID field here, we should find some matches on it. So if we say ID is, and then paste in that sysid and hit run, there we go. There's our WF activity, and you can see over here in the value column, that's that script that we're seeing rendered inside of the WF activity pop-up inside the workflow editor, right? So let me just go ahead and open this record up so get a little bit better view of what's going on. So you can see here's the value, and this is what we're wanting to change within the context of that workflow, right? So how do we do that? Well, this is locked down. So okay, so how can we get around that? Well, let's just go ahead and elevate our role here to security admin and take a look at how that record's secured. All right, so we're elevated. So from here, let me just do configure. I'm just going to duplicate this so I can get back to this easily. And then I'll right click and I'll configure security rules, right? Okay, so here I want to look at the right axis, and the sys variable value table is the one that I'm in, that I want to be able to have right access to so I can modify that script block. All right, so let's take a look at this real quick. So it looks like this is locked down to the maintenance role specifically. So here, I'm just going to click admin overrides. So and hit save. And let me refresh this guy. Okay, so now it's editable. So now I can come in here and I can say, I don't know, my new code, just add a comment. Hit save on this guy. Okay, so that updated that value record, right? And so let's go back to that workflow context that I had open up and see if that actually worked or not. So here we are in that workflow context. I'm going to refresh it. This is tied to that one change record I had open. And let's click on this now and see what we see. We still see the newing up of that instance. Nothing's changed here. Nothing's different. That is interesting. Why is that? I'll tell you why. This is the most likely reason, because this particular instance of this workflow was likely generated and using a version of the workflow that's earlier than the one tied to the record that we updated. And so that's the thing, right? So if we go back to this values table and we say, oh, okay, you know what? I want to see the disassociate approval records. Okay, that's the ID of the WF activity, right? But I want to see this. Let me see. How can we customize this column here? Tags, class created. Cancel. Okay. Is this where we want to be, or do we want to be somewhere else here? Let's see. There's the value. Let's go back to the activity list. Where's the activity list? That's the same value. This is the workflow activity record. It's the editor. Where the heck is the activity list? I had that open. Now it seems gone and missing. Let's go back to that again. So WF activity list. All right. I think I still have that sysid in my clipboard. Okay, there's our sysid activity. Let's say show matching on disassociated approval records. This is the name of the activity. And then let's clear the sysid. And what this is going to show us is it's going to show us all versions of it, of that workflow activity, assuming the name hasn't changed over time. It's going to show us each instance of it that's associated with a different version of the workflow. You can see this one is published true, this one is published false, right? So, so most likely what's happening here and why the context is not showing the updated value is that because the one that's being used in that context is this one, the one that's not currently published, right? So we want to update that too. So to make this a little bit easier, I think what I want to do is at the bottom of this workflow activity record, I want to be able to render the variable values down here as a related list to make it easier to get to, see, and update what exists in there. So what I'll do is go to relationship. We'll go to system definition relationships, and we're going to create a new relationship record here. So we'll click new. All right, so it's a new relationship record. We're just going to call this, we'll see, workflow variables, or we can even just call it variables, right? Yeah, probably just, there we go. Or let's do WF activity variables, okay? So this is where, okay, so what we want to do is apply this to that workflow activity table, right? So that's what we'll do here. So it applies to WF activity. And we're going to query from the values table. So the sys underscore variables, or variable value. So value table. Okay, and then our query is going to be current dot add encoded query where, and we were looking at it's the ID of that we're matching on. So ID, and this is kind of what we want here. So I'll just copy that query, come back here to let's just paste this in and take a quick look at it. So yeah, so this is basically what we want. This is going to be the sysid, the document key is going to be the sysid of parent.sysid, right? Just like that. Now we should probably, sometimes with the relationships, now that should probably work because you're always going to have a parent ID, but just as a warning with relationship records that sometimes, you're not, if there's a possibility that you're not going to get a value from whatever parent field you're accessing, it will potentially return all records in the table, which could be a performance hit as well as messy and something you're not going to want to see, right? All right. So that is the query condition that we need here to return and make visible those records. So let's go ahead and submit that. WF activity variables. So let's go back to our um, activity record, workflow activity record. Here we are. And then let's modify our related lists. Here we can add in our workflow activity variables relationship I just created. So now down here you'll see there's one found record. So this is nice. So this will pull in underneath of whatever activity you want to target in any workflow. It'll pull in all the variables associated to that particular activity that you can directly modify here within this code, right? So here we are looking at this. This is the one that has the modification already. It's showing my new code is there. So that's the most recent version, published version of the workflow. But as we were seeing in the context, the version that is being used in that context doesn't appear to have the change that I made. So my guess is then that that's going to be this one that is false here that's showing up in the workflow activities table having the same workflow activity name. So if we open up that particular record here, and actually in this case we probably just copy the sysid of that workflow activities. No, actually, let's make it, I'm sorry, cancel that. Let's make it easy. Just open it up. Since we already created that relationship, now we have this down here, and you can see down here it does not have the customization. It is just that one liner like we were seeing in that context. So now if I modify this directly here, I can add that same comment. So say new code mod here, right? Okay, so new code modification made directly there in production for an older version of the workflow that should be pertinent to this running context that may potentially still hit that activity in the future. So now let's go ahead and refresh the view of this context and take a look to ensure that it's showing the modification we just made. There you go. Yeah, see, there it is. New code mod here, right? So anyways, it's like I said, it's nothing, ground shaking or breaking, but it's just a nice little hint, pointer, tip to help you when you're stuck in a bad situation, where you need to fix a bunch of flows that are still active out there, and you can't wait for a new version of the flow to be published. So this will help you to get that fix out there into production as quickly as possible, and still be able to move forward with those ones that haven't hit that activity block yet. So anyways, sorry, it's been a long time since I did a video. Definitely rough around the edges with the delivery, but I was kind of just hacking as I went along, and I'm still getting used to this San Diego interface. But I hope that this tip and pointer here is helpful for someone out there. I know it'll be helpful for myself to look back at it in the future should I need to do this again. So anyways, I hope you got something out of this, and talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.